Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. It's Thursday evening, which means we have somebody legit. Whenever we get those super guests, it is Thursday night, and we have David Eckert from the Clarion Ledger, the Ole Miss beat writer. How you doing, David?
I appreciate it, Stephen. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. Hey, I just my day was transformed, and I want to talk to you a little bit about this. When is in your mind the right point at which you're allowed to start eating fall food? Because I just had a pumpkin spice popsicle that changed my life, and I just wanted to tell you about it.
I have a problem with pumpkin spice. I don't know why. Just that whole thing. It is bizarre. But fall food, let's say Oktoberfest beer. Let's do that. That'll be the fall thing. I think October 1st is the time when you can truly just switch over to that, especially in a place like Mississippi, because let's face it, September is basically summer light in Mississippi. Sure. Down here in Florida, that would be January, but up in Mississippi, that is September. But yeah, the pumpkin spice craze, I feel like somebody just got a little bit out of control with it. And it's almost like Furby or those go-to things from back in the day. I think that is where pumpkin spice is right now. I blame Starbucks. I blame several people, but I don't know if you should have like pumpkin spice donuts, stuff like that. There's no need.
Yeah. See, I won't put it in my coffee. I'm not a sweet coffee person, so I'm never doing pumpkin spice lattes or anything. But, it's like a little treat here and there. Yeah, I think it's all right.
Yeah, I get it, but like those Halloween, those true autumn foods, I think October 1st.
Okay.
That's kind of the start. Which, I mean, let's be honest. If you had that a pumpkin spice popsicle, that doesn't necessarily make sense, and I can't really register that. But it's in the last week of September, so you're probably close enough. But it's kind of like what I worry about with pumpkin spice, because that is becoming the new fall thing. You can go into Walmart right now and see Christmas decorations.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, come on, it's Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's my favorite holiday in the world. Yeah. It always has been. You got the Egg Bowl, you have everything around it. Was the holiday that my grandmother most cared about. All the family came back for it. I mean, it's the big day in the family. And now we just gotten to the point where, okay, we just need to overlook that. Let's go ahead and start preparing for Christmas.
Yeah. Thanksgiving has become the Black Friday Eve,
Yeah.
But, I'm with you though. We need to respect the sanctity of Thanksgiving. I don't know how we got here. I'm sorry for the
Well, we're going to get back with saying I think this is going to be the last year that Ole Miss versus Mississippi State is on Thanksgiving night. I think next year it will be Texas and Texas A&M, because that is a traditional Thanksgiving game. I think everybody's going to want to watch that. And Ole Miss and Mississippi State will be back on Saturday.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought about that, but I guess logistically it does make some sense. But I don't know. I mean, I haven't been down here long enough to know if that would upset folks or not.
It depends. Some people that tailgate in the Grove and they make a big deal with that, I think they would prefer it to be on Saturday. And media members, if you polled any media member that's covering this game, they obviously don't want to work on Thanksgiving. But I think I like the game on Thanksgiving. It's fun. It's a nice way at the end of the night. You cut on the game. You have your turkey. It's fun for me. And, weird things happen in the Egg Bowl. And that is going to be swept under the rug when it's happening at 11 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you have the nation's college football attention. Obviously, there's NFL on, but that is kind of unique, because I don't know that there is another slot anywhere where you get that outside of the national championship games, the playoff. But yeah, it's a unique window.
I think part of Ole Miss building its brand happened because of this being on that night and
Yeah.
being the eyes where people that doesn't normally pay attention are paying attention. But people are going to get it on Saturday. I think that's destined to happen. You get what you asked for, essentially. All right, so let's turn our attention. We're 5 minutes into this right now, and we're finally going to turn our attention to the Magnolia Bowl, which this is your first time covering an Ole Miss LSU game, and I was trying to explain to you before we started recording what this game means to Ole Miss fans. This is probably the game on the schedule that Ole Miss fans most want to win. Not the game that they most don't want to lose. That's the Egg Bowl, but the game they most want to win. And because of that, the effort and the game that you actually see on the field, this is a highly prone to upset type football game.
Mm-hmm.
This is a game that can get a little bit weird. It can get a little bit scattered in the fourth quarter, and it's not necessarily a talent base. Now, there's been some situations when LSU just absolutely boat raced Ole Miss. That's
Right.
not what I'm saying.
Right.
But it's a situation, you go back to 2013 with Hugh Freeze playing against top 10 LSU team, and Ole Miss had like 13 starters out that night. Ole Miss won the game. So this is a game that can get sideways on LSU. And I think LSU is legitimately scared of this game if you talk to their fans because of the way their defense has performed. They've been in the hundreds in pass coverage. They are 10th or 11th in the SEC in sacks, which their front seven is athletic, is what Ole Miss saw this previous weekend. But if they're not getting home, they're not getting home. What do you think that Ole Miss needs to do to be overly competitive in this game?
Yeah, I mean, they need to win the line of scrimmage. Obviously, I mean, there's moments that you can point to in that Alabama game that were difference makers. But to me, Ole Miss lost the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, and that's why they lost the game. So obviously, we've talked about the offensive line being an issue kind of repeatedly. That seems to be the storyline every week, and I don't think that's going away. But defensively, I think that front, whatever number you want to assign there, depending on how you look at Pete Golding's defense, needs to be a little bit better. And then they've got to make Jayden Daniels uncomfortable. I know we're going to get onto that a little bit, but that to me is you got to perform in the trenches. That offensively, that gives you the platform that you need for your skill players to make a difference. Ole Miss's skill players didn't have an impact in that Alabama game, right? And then defensively, it's everything. I mean, it allows you to create that chaos that can lead to difference-making turnovers. Obviously, getting after the quarterback. I don't think Ole Miss can, just kind of go into a shell against LSU and be like one of those bend but don't break defenses that you kind of see a lot in college football that become popular. I don't think that's the path to winning this game for them. They need to control the line of scrimmage.
I've got a theory right now, and let me run this by you real quick. And that is Ole Miss is running in the pass game a lot of slow developing plays. Mm-hmm. Most of them are RPOs, so it's probably second and third level RPOs. So against Mercer, against Tulane, against Georgia Tech, you can do that. But when the athletes get better, like Alabama, like LSU, like Georgia, you're going to naturally have less time to do it. So your pass game doing that is going to be less effective. Ole Miss, in my opinion, needs a short, quick passing game. Hitches, slants, bubbles, that type of stuff. Pop passes to the tight end, that would slow down the linebacker flow, let you stay ahead of the change because you're not going to complete many third downs on 3rd and 12. You're just not in this league against these teams. And I think that quick passing game can fix just about everything that's wrong because people blame it on the protection. I blame it on slow developing plays and almost getting a little bit cute.
Yeah, I think there's some validity to that. I think, what Lane Kiffin said after Alabama was, I mean, to me, my personal interpretation, he basically said, we need to hit some shots, which to me says we don't believe that we can move the ball bit by bit by bit by bit down the field against this defense. We're going to need to do it all at once. We're going to need to have some good variance on our shot plays. They didn't get that. I don't know. We'll see if they feel similarly against LSU. My guess is, that's a little bit more of a vulnerable defense. You might see more, they might feel a little bit more confident about what they can do. But I do think there's some validity to what you're saying. Everything is down the field, and that's what Lane Kiffin has built this offense around is, they run the ball effectively and they score from far, right? That's the tagline. So I do understand the trepidation to kind of move away from your identity. But sometimes the situation calls for it, like you're saying.
Yeah. Especially when you're playing like Alabama, LSU, and Georgia. Because if you look at the ESPN FBI, this is the weird thing. And there's a weird thing going on in the Ole Miss fan base this week to where they lose a game on the road at Alabama and they're acting like they got beat by Jacksonville State or Tulane or something. Like it is bizarre. And I think there's a shot of perspective that people need to have. Nobody's calling it a moral victory. It's okay to be upset about it, but you understand what's happening and understand the history of what's going on. It was 5 years ago that Ole Miss was getting 66-7 in that stadium. It's kind of a different world. But whenever you look at this Alabama, this LSU, this Georgia, and you look at the FPI, those are the 3 games out of Ole Miss's 12 that was even a toss-up. Alabama and Georgia were solid favorites, like mid-60s probability favorites. LSU's a coin flip. And the other 9 games, Ole Miss is over a 60% favorite in those games, probability-wise. Why is everybody freaking out?
I think, Steven, a lot of the freak out comes from the perception that Alabama is not Alabama this year. And I don't know whether that perception is incorrect. I don't. You obviously they lose to Texas. They look terrible on the road against USF. I think if Ole Miss, goes in and loses by 2 scores to Alabama last year, the year before, there's a little bit more perspective being applied. That obviously is not the case here. You're right. People are losing their minds. But, look, whatever you think of Alabama, their concentration of elite athletes is infinitely higher than what Ole Miss has, period. Like, end of discussion.
78 4- and 5-star players.
Yeah. So, I will never, I guess, change my perception of an Ole Miss team based on losing in Tuscaloosa, as long as that continues to be the case. So, like you said, maybe some perspective needed there. But, yeah. At the same time, I do think you can say, look, Lane Kiffin is compensated like a coach who should be winning this game occasionally. And this was their best chance. So it's okay to feel disappointment. I don't think it's okay to you can do whatever you want. I don't think it's correct to change your perspective.
I don't think like going into a Wednesday of the LSU game week, this game should not have that kind of lag in the fan base.
Yeah.
I think people should have thrown it away pretty quickly. Even if you think that Ole Miss should have won this game, and the second quarter was almost malpractice, honestly, the way it was called. And there's plenty of things to be upset about, but games don't, like, we do this thing to where we take a data point and we just expand that out into infinity. If you lose a game, you're going to lose every other game. If you win a game, you're going to beat everybody else. And that line of thinking kind of messes with me.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's hard. Like it's for fans, and I have a different experience because I'm not emotionally invested in Ole Miss football. But, for the teams that I am emotionally invested in, whether it's, baseball, whatever, I do the same stuff. Like it's hard to take something that you care about so deeply and think about it rationally. It's hard. So I get it, but you're right. It's time to move on, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, back to the LSU game. See, I'm still on that game. It's still affecting me. But Jayden Daniels is probably the best quarterback in the Southeastern Conference.
Mm-hmm.
LSU probably has the best wide receiver in the Southeastern Conference in Malik Neighbors. That is half of LSU's passing yards. So I am trying to figure out how Ole Miss is going to try and limit Jayden Daniels, who can run the ball. He ran for over 100 yards last year against Ole Miss. And how do you? They're going to move Malik Neighbors around. I talked to Blake Ruffino on Are You Serious Sports, and he was like, "Hey, they're moving Neighbors around and doing all that stuff." I'm trying to figure out how Ole Miss can slow that down, because that seems to be the key in this football game, is trying to break up the Malik Neighbors and Jayden Daniels relationship.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of coaches wish that they had the answer to that, but it's tough. Like, I don't think Ole Miss has a guy who you can just slap on Neighbors and that you just remove him or limit him. So I think you have to get after Daniels. You have to make Daniels uncomfortable. That's the best way, I think, when you have that kind of situation. And then once you do that, you have to limit his ability to scramble and extend the play. I think Lane Kiffin said this is not the case. Very rarely will I say that, like, I openly disagree. Suntarine Perkins is going to spy Jayden Daniels, right? But so I think that's probably going to be their answer there. So we'll see. I don't think you have to stop them. You just have to keep them from going nuclear.
Yes, the over-under is nearly 70 points in this game. They expect points this week. What I would do if I was the defensive coordinator, if I was Pete Golding, and I'm not, is I would spy with Suntarine Perkins from the right-hand side of Jayden Daniels to where you force him to the left. Mm-hmm. You probably want to force Jayden Daniels to the left as much as possible. Whenever he scrambles to the right, that's obviously his right-hand dominant side, and plays can be made deep downfield. And Ole Miss has had a problem giving up explosive plays this season on defense. The defense has been pretty good in the red zone. I think teams are only scoring like 42% of the time touchdowns in the red zone. If you can limit explosive plays, I think, even as good as this LSU offense is, I think Ole Miss has a chance to win this game actually fairly comfortably if they can do that. If LSU's offense goes off and they're rolling, is Katie bar the door. But if you can limit explosives and do the things that you can limit that offense just a little bit. I'm talking about giving up 31 points. I'm not talking about shutting down the thing. If you do that, I think Ole Miss can win this game. Yeah,
I agree. Look, if you're a person who believes in analytics, the EPA numbers on these two offenses are very similar. The difference, or one of the major differences, is that Ole Miss, their field positioning has been atrocious. So they need to play well on special teams. Can't turn the ball over. They need to win that battle. And look, I think they can go ahead. I really do. I think, a healthy, and that's what we think this is going to be, a healthy Ole Miss offense is perfectly capable of keeping up. Perfectly capable. There's no reason that they can't.
And another thing that I think is going to be interesting for people to watch this game, and Lane Kiffin mentioned it earlier in the week, but I think he's actually going to do it, is I think there's going to be some variance in the run game. And it's not just going to be inside zone. You're going to see counter. You're going to see gap scheme stuff. You're going to see them consciously try to get Quinshon Judkins going, because against LSU, you have to earn the right to go against that weak secondary. If you can do that, you have a chance to be successful, but you need to earn the right, because if you get into 3rd and long against these guys, they're going to put Harold Perkins on the end. They're going to get after your quarterback, and it's going to be a long day.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah. So what are you looking forward to in this game?
I am looking forward to, and we touched on it again, is what Suntarine Perkins just did last week repeatable? I don't know. I suspect probably. He's an elite athlete, but
it's pretty Harold Perkins from last year. It's almost like watching that.
Yeah. I have a story coming out tomorrow that basically says exactly that. So
listen to that. And I did not plan this, but yes, get the Clarion Ledger, read the story. Yeah.
I talked to some talent evaluators and basically said, very similar. So, that's one thing. I want to see the Ole Miss offense with all of its weapons. And Trey Harris was limited last week. I know he played, but healthy Trey Harris, Zachary Franklin, Caden Prescorn on the field, Quinshon Judkins presumably, healthy. What does this look like? Does this change the dynamic? Do they become more explosive? So I guess one kind of on both sides of the ball there that I'm looking at.
Yeah, this is honestly the first game to where Ole Miss is actually going to have its offense on the field. This is, what is it, game 5 on the field? Yeah. And you actually have your weapons out on the field. I'm looking forward to seeing a healthier Zachary Franklin more so than I am. I honestly know what I'm getting from Trey Harris, and he's just a dude. But I want to see what that with a healthy Zachary Franklin, what that looks like, because Franklin at UTSA, I mean, he's the active leader in touchdowns receiving right now, and Ole Miss seeing him, that's a weapon with Caden Prescorn. There's a chance that every quadrant of the field is stressed if they do this right.
100%. Yeah, I mean, if you have any skepticism about like the whole group of 5 thing, I mean, Trey Harris should have removed that for you. I mean, Zachary Franklin's a dude, so I'm excited to see what he can do as well.
Now, defensively, we talked about Suntarine, and you figure he's going to spy. Tennyson also against Jalen Milroe was used as a spy, and he actually played pretty well. Not as flashy as what Suntarine did, but he played pretty well. And I'm wondering, linebackers-wise, if you're going to put Suntarine Perkins on the field, who sits down?
It's a good question. He's been used. They did use him on the edge a little bit. If you look on Pro Football Focus, they actually call him an edge rusher, which is interesting. But from that part of the field, you can rotate a lot there, right? I mean, I think you just take a little bit from everybody instead of like, all right, I don't know, Isaac Ukwu, you're sitting down. Because I don't think that's how they'll approach it. But if he's going to play in the middle, which I don't think he will, but again, Ole Miss has shown a willingness to rotate there, so we'll see. Jeremiah John Baptiste looks like he was wearing a non-contact at practice Tuesday, so maybe something to monitor there. I don't know, but I think those are both positions where you can rotate pretty comfortably and just kind of spread out the stress.
All right, safety positions. The explosive plays on defense have been an issue. How do we think Ole Miss is going to try and limit those? Is that a personnel issue? Is it a scheme issue? What's going on there?
I don't know. I mean, look, it's, you don't have a ton of high level athletes at that part of the field if you're Ole Miss, right? Like a lot of group of 5 transfers, we'll see. I don't know. I think it has to start with getting after the quarterback. If you can do that, it becomes a lot easier on that part of the field. So I don't know. I don't have a set of eyes that can diagnose, what they're running and what they can change. But I do think if they can improve, up front, that makes everything a whole lot easier.
Yeah, and just so everybody watching, if you want an idea that if Ole Miss is going well, if JJ Pegues is looking like a dude and is disruptive in the middle of the field, just know that it's probably going to end up going pretty well. He's going to be important in this game. LSU doesn't run the ball much. They run it some. But him getting out of Jayden Daniels, if your spy is on the right-hand side and forcing him to the left, that is going to make it look a little bit different, in my opinion. Anyway, David. But I do appreciate it, and I appreciate the pumpkin spice talk to start off this video. I did not expect to go pumpkin spice, but we did. But thank you very much for that, and thanks to everybody for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Anyway, David, man, it's always a pleasure. This is fantastic, and thanks for bringing it, buddy.
Appreciate it, Steven. Thanks for having me as always.